and welcome back to Sister Please with me, Khizra Munir. And today's guest is very special, at least to me, because I've been wanting to have this conversation for the longest time, and Sister Please is just the right opportunity for it. Please say hello to Sadia Khatri.
Hello.
Sadia, you can say hello. Ek dafa dekh lo camera. Sadia is very nice.
A little bit.
So Sadia is one of the founding members of Girls at Dhabas. It was a movement that we all sort of paid attention to because it was a bunch of women who were sort of they'd stepped out to take back access to public spaces, because we all know that just showing up at a dhaba or enjoying street food or just going out even going out to the bazaar is a chore and is a task. And even though we kapdon ke bazaar to hum reclaim kar rahe hain and women just go, but generally just going and sitting at a dhaba literally is a problem. So like, what was that one incident that triggered Girls at Dhabas?
One incident? No, I think it's a whole life, right? It's, अगर उसको मैं summarize करूँ तो मैं ये कहूँगी कि it came from really wanting a relationship with the city, the way that we see men have. So it's not कि औरतें नहीं होती. This particular collective was about middle class and upper class women being in public spaces in unconventional ways and outside of a guardian, right? क्योंकि अगर आप अपने भाई के साथ या husband के साथ या some male patriarch, or even if you go with a bunch of women, it's still okay, it's acceptable. But really this whole collective was about attacking our ideas of respectability and saying that upper class women, elite women, middle class women have a responsibility to undo these ideas of respectability that harm all of us, right? एक incident में, I mean basic चीज़ें like कि मुझे अगर it wasn't one incident, it was just basic everyday things like why can't I just know the way home from any part of the city? रास्ते नहीं पता. I'm reliant on other people for directions, right? That's such a strange thing. I mean, if you've traveled to other countries, which a lot of us have, you have such a different relationship with those cities. You end up taking risks, you end up staying out, you end up doing things, you end up having a certain curiosity towards those spaces that really not only deepen your relationship with the city you're in, but your relationship with yourself, right? I think it also has to do a lot with not knowing how to be alone, जो कि औरतों को नहीं पता होता, ना private space में, ना public space में.
But we know how to be alone abroad.
Yeah, so what happens in our own spaces, in our own cities, right? So it's easier to say कि दुनिया खराब है और public spaces में I feel uncomfortable because working class men leer at me. But where in the world have you not had people leer at you, right? Or the problem here is also कि हमने streets को एक threat बना दिया है, right? तो हम कहते हैं कि बाहर मत जाओ कुछ हो जाएगा. But if you look at it statistically, where is most of the violence taking place against women? Is it in public spaces or is it in private spaces, right? So do you see how we create this binary? Not only of public and private, but also of class. Because you make the working class man the enemy, while men in our own homes and men who are close to us, who claim to love us, get away with all kinds of violences, right? Homicide के आप rates देखें. Look at what's happening with trans folk right now, right? How many of the perpetrators are known to us? तो उसको छुपाने के लिए हमने एक narrative बना दिया है कि औरतों को बाहर नहीं जाना चाहिए.
और ये narrative over the course of like decades बन रहा है. मतलब, you know, it's not just a problem today. Obviously, we have all been, हमारी माँओं को ये condition किया गया कि public spaces safe नहीं है, तुम घर में बैठो. हम फिर भी अब this generation of women जो अब निकल रही हैं, but like our mothers and our khalas and our nannies, they were conditioned to stay in the house.
I don't know. I feel like when I hear from my Ammi, she used to play cricket on the streets. I feel like it was a little different for her growing up. Something, I don't know how much I can comment on.
I guess that's a personal experience maybe. Because I see the women in my house who are quite sheltered.
Yeah, I do think it's a class thing. I think it's about हमारे घर की औरत बाहर नहीं नजर आनी चाहिए, right? और हम उस safety में भी buy into that safety. So we think कि अगर आपको driver हर जगह लेके जा रहे हैं या आप एक डब्बे से डब्बे में जा रहे हैं ना हर वक्त, right? And we think this makes us safer somehow, but it doesn't. In fact, it's making everyone more estranged to each other. जो class barriers हैं हमारे, like I now have friendships with, you know, a rickshawala or a guard, and these are relationships that are seen to be threatening to the fabric of society. Because these are relationships across class and relationships of friendship, and they're seen from a sexual threat perspective. Na? Ke, oh, what if I think the whole like thing that people are terrified of is कि oh what if हमारे घर की औरत this possession, right, हमारे घर की औरत, as if she's not an entity of her own with her own choices and desires, gets involved with somebody of that class. Yeah. So when we're talking about gender, the one thing that I think we need to be so mindful of is that it is absolutely linked to class as well. So what is your relationship with your city based on your class? So how are you behaving? What are the entitlements you think? हम क्यों walk नहीं करते? We ask to be dropped like right at the right. 2 minute चल के क्या हो जाएगा? So these kind of behaviors that are coming from the kind of class background that we are in, ये कोई और नहीं बदलेगा आपके लिए. तो वो self reflection, I think Girls at Dhaba was trying to point us towards both this public and private binary, but also कि आपकी खुद की ज़िंदगी में आप इन चीज़ों को कैसे undo कर सकते हैं. आप respectability को थोड़ा rethink करें.
Okay. No, that really makes sense. And I think just by how you are sort of leading by example and living by example is sort of a reflection of that. Like Abhi, we were just discussing, you were telling your rickshaw wala to come and pick you up at a certain time. And in any other situation, जो एक conventional हमारी understanding है, जब हम बाजार जाते हैं या अगर आप रिक्शा में जा रहे हो तो आप अच्छा कोई छेड़ ना ले, दुपट्टा चादर ओढ़ के बैठना, ये करना होगा, but you're dressed the way you want. Like, no, it's very refreshing to me that I know that you are not going to step out of here and put a chadar around you and step into that rickshaw. You are wearing a sleeveless shalwar kameez. You've got tattoos. You're doing you, and you're going to sit in that rickshaw and you're going to go home.
Bilkul. I want to live in my city the way that I would live in another city in the world, and it's never going to match up. I don't think I can't say I felt as free in Karachi as I have. There are moments. And that have to do a lot with our home spaces also, I think. Lekin yes, if I am to live here, if I'm choosing a life here, then I want to be able to do this. The thing is, there's a culture you're born into, right?
Yeah.
But with every decision you make, you are either replicating that culture or you're saying, no, I am also participating in culture and this is what I want culture to be.
Yeah.
But it can't happen alone, right? So अगर मैं sleeveless पहन के घूमी हूँ, it's not because एक दिन मुझे कुछ वही नाज़िल हुई कि oh, Sadi, you can. It's because I saw other women, older women, making those choices and saw that it's possible for me.
Yeah.
Right? So ये एक collective shift है जो I feel like नज़र भी आ रहा है, but I think we can all point to people in our lives, right? We can all point to people in our lives who have kind of opened that window for us.
Yeah.
So it becomes easier, right, if one person does it for the next person to do it. And the more of us do it, the more you'll see it happening.
And I feel like this is one of the beauties of like female friendships. And I feel like they play such a big part in at least the lives of Desi women, because sometimes the kind of sort of mental freedom or the creative freedom that we don't get in our house, we get through our friendships. Like my example, I come from a very they're very progressive, but they were very simple. Like ambition वगैरह उनको नहीं समझ आती कि क्या scope हो सकता है career का, या if I went into advertising, what was the scope of that career? So, and I in turn did not know. Then, but through the friends that I made and the mentors that I found, I realized कि मैं आगे क्या कर सकती हूँ. So, in that way, do you think female friendships sort of enable that part of us?
Oh yeah, it's ये वही बात है ना कि आप independently तो कुछ नहीं करते. So even if I want an independent life, if I'm living alone in Karachi, it's because I saw other women be able to do that.
Yeah.
Every time I've made a decision that supports my independence, there's like a dozen women behind me, showing me it's possible, telling me what to do, telling me what not to do, what battles to pick. So we do it for each other. I also think that female friendships and queer friendships have been the site of healing for me, the site of learning for me, my politics, my creative, like everything comes together in that kind of web of people who hold you, who correct you. So I've grown up in Karachi. I did my undergrad in America, and when I came back, I realized that I can't live with my family.
Yes.
There's just too many fights, whatever. उसमें नहीं जाते, ठीक है? And I had to decide at some point is how is this going to work if I live in Karachi. But for me to move out, the first thing was that I saw other women doing it, right? that made me think it's possible.
Yeah.
And then when I was doing it, there was a whole like team of people,
Yeah.
right, who were there for emotional support, for logistical support.
Yeah.
So ये independence वाली बात एक बहुत बड़ी scam है. And in fact, when we're only chasing independence and saying ke me, you know, that kind of girl boss feminism, which again ends up replicating not just ideas of power, but also very dangerous kind of habits of class.
Yeah.
Right? ये मैं उसकी बात नहीं करी. This is not in service of just my independence. It's all linked. So we have to know that. So that's where the female friendship and the queer friendships come in.
Yeah.
Because without them, we are nothing.
Yeah.
You know? So that's how I think of it. And it wouldn't be possible for me to have this life in Karachi if I didn't have the community that I do.
Yeah. And so I think you sort of answered a bit of the next question that I had lined up. But you live alone and you just said that, you know, you wanted to because घर पे रहना वो नहीं था. So how was that process? Like drama पे होना because यहाँ पे तो अगर एक अपने शहर में रह के अगर if you want to move out of the family system, it becomes like ऐसा क्या हो गया? और मतलब you want to live separately from us. Like यहाँ पे
Yeah, it's okay if you're in a different city.
Yes.
But if you're in the same city, कैसे हो सकता है?
बेटा शादी करके अलग नहीं हो सकता.
नहीं हो सकता.
So how did you manage to do that?
No,
like
it
how was that process?
It wasn't easy. इतनी लड़ाइयाँ हुई, इतने ड्रामे हुए. I don't think लड़ाई झगड़े के बगैर आप these are really big decisions. There are going to be ruptures, and then at some point you have to come back and heal them too. But in order to get to that, you first need to make that rupture, and you decide when you're ready for that. Yeah. You decide if you have the back end, the support system, the friends, the community to go through a rupture like that. Because you can't do it alone. So when I felt like I was in that place, and I moved out with a friend. Okay. I was living with a friend for 3 years, and I didn't tell my dad. Okay. So I told my mom. उनको तैयार कर रही थी आहिस्ता आहिस्ता. बहुत परेशानी चली थी घर में. जिस दिन गाड़ी आई जिसमें सारा सामान मेरा जा रहा था, उस दिन मैंने अब्बा को बताया कि ये हो रहा है. And we fought, and it was not pretty, and the whole year after that was really tumultuous. But you know, that's unavoidable. Either you compromise, or if you know you're going to take a step like that, you have to be ready for or maybe you're not ready, but you have to deal with it. You know, it's like it's worth it. You have to decide, is this worth it? It was worth it for me. So खैर बहुत लड़ाई झगड़े हुए और अभी भी होते रहते हैं, but अब कम होते हैं. And being away from them has almost given me enough grounding and sanity to now work on my relationship with them. Yeah. You know, so now when I go back to that home space, and I know I have to heal a lot there. Yeah. Because it's not all clean, but I have more capacity. Yeah. You know, because I have this other space that isn't enmeshed and entangled. Yes. So ये सब चीजें मतलब लेते हुए, लेकिन I think one thing to remember is, you know, I think we feel like so much responsibility to change our lives and be like, why am I not able to do it? And then feel stuck. Yeah. But it really has to be at your pace and at your time.
Oh my God.
You know?
Oh my God. Thank you for saying that. Because I feel like so many women need to hear that, because we spend so much time just kicking ourselves. Yeah, I'm such a failure for not being able to make this happen for myself.
No, look at the odds, right? And these are structural odds. It's not a, you know, think about, again, the society we live in. While on the one hand, I'm saying कि हाँ, औरतों की responsibility है कि वो अपने fear को देखें, उसको undo करें, अपनी respectability के बारे में सोचें. Like, stop playing into respectability and all of that. But it also, like, the odds are a lot, and you have to develop a thick skin, right? Yeah. Because it's not just, and I'm not saying it's about आप सड़क पे निकलते हैं और किसी ने कुछ कह दिया. Okay, that happens 1 out of 10 times. Most of the time, it's not outside. It's in the home space. Yeah. And the home space is the space where it is the hardest to make shifts, in my experience. Yeah, no, like, okay, I'm wearing sleeveless around here. Yeah. मैं अब जाके अपने अब्बा के सामने sleeveless पहनती हूँ. So do you see how, in some ways, it's easier in with a public persona to be like, I do all these things.
Yeah, but there's so much history and baggage there.
But in the home space, how much have you know? Right. And that's where the real shit is at, and that's where the real shit really weighs us down. Yeah. So this pressure of कि मुझे सब कुछ बदलना है, like it's okay, take your time. Yeah. But find a solid community and, you know, hold on to it when it's there, and let that be your compass, I think.
So I remember, and in the age of Instagram, I feel like there's, you know, it's so awkward how we're just like, oh, that time I saw you do that. It's like, I find it really funny. So you once posted the story about you like out with your mother and having like I think it was
Oh my God,
like,
you remember this?
I remember that, and I messaged you then, and I
Wow.
messaged you then, and
Yeah.
I was like, Sadia, this like just seeing this situation brings me so much joy that you are living this life which would like literally undo a family, and I'm pretty sure you went through that drama, but like seeing you with your mother and like the fact that she and you had a relationship was very refreshing.
सब कुछ अम्मी के पास आता है ना वापस जाके.
So
All
like,
the
yeah, so
how did we get there?
Yeah.
We're still getting there. It's I think she had to really accept a lot and deal with a lot. एक तो उनके सारे बच्चे ऐसे हैं, हम 4 हैं, सही है, और वो अक्सर कहती हैं कि मैंने मतलब क्या किया, क्या गलती की तुम लोगों को बाहर भेजा पढ़ने के लिए, ये गलती थी, and we're kind of like it's your genetic material, babe.
Yeah,
like, you know,
yeah.
you gave it whatever it is. और वो खुद भी बड़ी आवारागर्द थी अपने बचपन में, जो कहानियाँ अभी पता चलती हैं. So we're like, bro, like how do you not, you know, see it? But it's a very slow, steady process, and there have been times where I've been like, oh, I don't know if I want to work on this relationship, even, you know, and you have that angsty kind of rebellious reaction to your parents, where you're like, fuck you, I'm just going to do my own thing, and then you realize that's damaging to both of you, or you go to therapy and you realize how that shit just catches up. But I think again I'm gonna go to this is not an individual thing at all. I have a solid system of support through my siblings. तो हम 4 हैं, हम एक नहीं हैं, उससे बहुत फ़र्क पड़ता है. But अम्मा के साथ it's been over time, slowly, her kind of accepting, and you know, like I'm a stoner and I stone in front of my mother, and this is something that she really had to, you know, swallow and be like, okay, I will accept this. तो उनको दाद देनी चाहिए. I think उनसे किसी से बात करनी चाहिए कि आपने कैसे किया आंटी?
मदर्स डे में उनका इंटरव्यू कर शीट भी लाइक अच्छा
नहीं वो तो
चाय बना के लाओ मैं बताती हूँ.
No, but we still, you know, it's not. There are moments where it feels like, wow, I can't believe we got here. And then they make all of it worth it. For me, that was when we took a walk together outside one day, like just randomly walking. And I was like, "Ye ho kya raha hai? How is this happening?"
But I feel like it's so important for so many people to hear this, that there was a coming back from this situation.
It's happening, and I do want to say that in like my 20s, it was a lot of random call, like सादे ये क्या लगा दिया इस चीज़ पे तुम्हारा नाम क्यों, इसमें सिगरेट, like तुम्हारी DP बदलो, अभी तक आता है, and she'll crop my DP and send me like a version where, you know, my skin is not showing so much, or like put stickers and be like ये लगा दो. So there is that, which I think again is the gaze of, you know, the family,
the extended
you know,
family.
So again, it has nothing to do with the dunya of the streets. It's just, it comes back to private spaces. Lately, you know, I've also, after I started living alone, I started thinking a lot about private spaces and our relationship with that. कि उस पे भी तो ध्यान देने की ज़रूरत है कि बाहर ठीक है हम आज़ादी ले रहे हैं, and there's, you know, things like Girls at Dhabas, or there's Aurat March. But जड़ तो private space. I mean, they affect each other. You can't think of them outside of each other. तो घरों के साथ हमारी क्या relationship है?
And this is so true कि like जो सारी वो उनको वो परेशानी हो ये क्या लगा दे, it's a lot to do with अपने वो जो लोग क्या कहेंगे. The log is your own flesh and blood and your own family. And I've also had this conversation with people where I was like, you know, if I ever feel policed, it's when I'm in Karachi. But if I ever go to another city, or if I'm in another country, and my mother will call me up, and like she'll forget time zones, and like रात के 3 बजे and I'm out, she'll just be like, अच्छा ठीक है चलो सुबह को बात करें. Not like तुम रात के 3 बजे बाहर क्या कर रही हो? Like one of those situations. So it's literally because she's just like यहाँ we have.
Because the closer you are to home, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
That makes so much sense.
Because you're seen as how are you read, right? It's a question of कि the family, oh ये एक loose औरत हो गई है, या एक she's it has to do with the way you're being read sexually.
Yeah, अकेले क्यों रहना चाहती है? That question कि अकेले क्यों रहना चाहती है?
We can't imagine women having happy, fulfilling, nurturing lives outside of the conventional marriage system, the heterosexual marriage system. And it's not just that we're told this, we ourselves can't imagine it. हमें भी ये लगता है, you know, I think in my 20s I've seen so many people like just kind of think like, okay, if I want to be azad, I need to move from my parents' house to my husband's house. There is nothing else, you know, and that's where you then turn to like those communities of female friends or your queer communities and see, okay, another kind of family is possible.
Yes.
Right? We can dream new families.
Because so many, I think, Pakistani or Desi women get married just to get out of their parents' house. And they end up going out of the frying pan into the fire. It's what is for so many women is that. Because उन्होंने सोचा at least अपने घर से तो निकलेंगे.
Yeah.
But it's so sad that that's the option that they come up with.
Yeah, and I don't want to, again, let's not blame, मतलब it's like कि कुछ और आपको दिया नहीं जा रहा है,
so बताया गया ना हमारी वो
yeah, the structurally आपके पास, and it's hard to say कि I'm going to reject these routes that are available to me and pick something completely different and new that is going to put me up against even more backlash and even more, kind of like you're walking around with a thick skin all the time. You have to explain yourself. You have to constantly be on guard. So, but it gets easier the more of us do it.
Yeah.
That's it.
I think it's the same way like when my mother's like, जब सारी लड़कियां एक दिन decide करके बाहर मोटरसाइकिलों पे निकलेंगी ना, then people will have to accept it. Like
absolutely,
so
exactly.
She's just like, that's how it's going
exactly.
to change. She's like, yes, it's great कि एक लड़की ना, she's like, the day all of you decide to get on a motorbike and just go out and pretend like it's normal. Yeah. And then it'll be normal. It doesn't have to be this announcement. Was एक दिन सब निकल जाओ.
What, and I think we're seeing like things like Aurat March or things like bike rallies जो हो रही होती हैं. Things like Aurat March and bike rallies are doing this kind of that here, look at what the city looks like when everyone कि कौन आके फिर if this was happening every day, right? But it's also about a diversity of options being seen as the normal. So not कि I'm not saying कि सब sleeveless में आते, like हर तरह के कपड़े जब normal होंगे, then no one's going to pinpoint one and say हमारे culture के खिलाफ है, right? So we need all of it to coexist, and that's when I think we'll accept all choices and not be like which is a better choice, which is a more feminist choice, because वो भी pressure आ जाता है.
Okay, so most recently, I've been sort of coming across your writing, and it's where does your writing inspiration come from? I know you give workshops also, and like it's just such profound, but also such relatable and beautiful writing.
Thank you. That's very kind.
Where
does inspiration come from? That is such a hard question. I studied journalism.
Okay.
And then I made a sideways move from journalism towards fully creative writing.
Okay.
But I was always interested in narrative writing. Okay. So my journalism career also is a lot of narrative work. Yeah. With a lot to do with stories. And my writing now is a lot of writing about life, about the experiences of gender and sexuality and the city. Yeah. So that's the kind of life writing I do. Of late, I've been writing more about my spiritual life and the divine. And then I write fiction. About feminist things.
And like, so what kind of students come to you? Is it like just women who come to you, or like do you get...
Oh, in my classes? Yeah. It's a bunch of... In my classes, I get a lot of people from Pakistan and India. That is my demographic. So it's usually a cross-border class, which is a lot of fun. बहुत मजा आता है. And the age... people of all kinds of ages. It's just really for anyone who is interested in... I have always loved to write. But until I was in college, I think मुझे बहुत एहसास कमतरी होती थी. I don't know if it has to do with a class. I could never imagine that someone like me could be a writer. But then there were these teachers who were like, no bro, like you can, कर लो मतलब. मैं physics पढ़ रही थी और फिर I just switched over. So I studied journalism and then I made a sideways move into creative writing, and that's what I do now. I love it.
And like, I love it. Does your writing also sort of take in your day-to-day experiences of like navigating the city as...
Oh, absolutely. Writing, I don't think writing is separate from living. Your creative life will reflect and funnel whatever is happening in your life, at least for someone like me. तो मेरी जिंदगी में जो कुछ भी चल रहा होता है, मेरी writing में उसी चीज़ के बारे में मैं लिख रही होती हूँ. So during the Girls at Dhaba days, there was a lot of writing about the city and gender and sexuality.
Yeah.
Now there's more writing about private spaces and about community and about grief also, because that's something I've been thinking about a lot. Different kinds of grief. There's a lot of writing about religion and the divine, and how those then entangle with class and with gender as well.
Yeah.
So what you're living, you're writing, and it's not... inspiration for work is just a mirror of what you are living. That's it.
So I've actually never heard anybody talk about how like we need to now tackle private spaces. Like, we've all always known कि ज़्यादा domestic violence और इस तरह के, you know, इस आपके घर में आप सबसे ज़्यादा unsafe होते हैं.
Yes.
But no one's actually been like, yes, domestic violence, we have to fix it, marriages में मसला होता है, but like actually addressing this and turning it into a topic, like yes, हम बाहर public spaces में crime और ये सब कुछ तो address करते हैं, but like a really big problem is the private lives of women.
I do think feminists are talking about it.
Yeah.
I just think it is the bigger bala, you know? It's a pahad. Because it's easier for me to go out and, in some ways, wear sleeveless, unsurveilled, and, you know, my father doesn't know what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's harder for me to live this at home and there not be consequences for it.
Yeah.
So it's not कि हम private spaces के बारे में बात नहीं कर रहे होते. I think it's just कि you shut down quicker. Because the violence is there, right? So it's not कि औरतें नहीं कह रही कि मुझे मारा जा रहा है, मुझे जलाया जा रहा है, मेरे ऊपर एसिड फेंकी जा रही है. And there are NGOs working on this. There are a group that people have been working on this on the level of policy, on the level of talking about everyday, you know, in our how or talking about sexual abuse, for instance, among children.
Yeah.
There are so many. But yeah, the problem is also कि हमने ये division बना दिया between public and private. We need to think about them in tandem.
Yeah.
Another problem is कि we're not going to rid ourselves of this bala, of this monster, if we're also not thinking about class politics. Because all of this, the way that private spaces are secured, and you know कि नहीं बताओ, अगर आपके घर में abuse है किसी को नहीं बताओ, because there is a certain image of respectability that you need to, you know, हमारे घर में तो नहीं होता है, right? या अगर cousin ने किया या मामू ने किया या भाई ने किया है, like, you're going to hide that. Everyone is going to work structurally to hide that. So it's just more entrenched, right?
That's horrible.
It's terrifying actually, right? Because when you start thinking about it, you slowly start realizing कि हमारे साथ game खेली गई है, right?
And you're constantly enabling monsters.
You're constantly enabling monsters, and you're kind of perpetuating this narrative.
Yeah.
You know, we all are when we don't speak up in our home spaces.
But like it's already been perpetuated because so much of this happens and there's a certain lack of consequence and accountability, so it keeps happening. And
I'll give you an example. There was a workplace I was at.
Yeah.
I think a workplace as an extension of these private, secure spaces, right? There was a working class man there who was harassing women. He was fired the next day.
Yeah.
When there was a boss figure who was harassing women, what do you think happened?
The women were
nothing happened. Basically nothing happened, right? कुछ नहीं. हाँ, या आप क्यों, you know, आप क्यों कर रही हैं या ये तो. So it's a class problem.
Yeah.
It's not just a gender problem.
No, like there's so many videos. Like I've seen one or two Indian women put up videos of like just retaking up, like trashing this man. Like this woman was on a flight and this man in the back just kept like sticking his hand up and like feeding her up. And she started to thrash him and be like, नहीं ये बेचारा ये वीडियो आप डिलीट कर दें, इसकी बीवी है, इसके बच्चे हैं, आप क्यों इनकी वो खराब कर रही, रेपुटेशन खराब कर रही, रिस्पेक्टेबल आदमी है, ये है वो. So like it's on the video. Wow. And she's just like, इन्होंने कोई रिस्पेक्ट वाला काम नहीं किया है. मैं आपको बता देती हूँ ये क्या कर रहे थे.
Yeah. We saw with Me Too, right? We saw how much we protect people who are from our own social and class background.
There's a lot of things that fall into Me Too that were so normalized, like certain behaviors. It doesn't always have to be like physical, the Me Too aspect of it. Like it is verbal harassment, blackmail.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Unsolicited.
Absolutely.
Like, इस तरह की चीज़. And like you're causing like this could be one of the men in my life also, because ज़रूरी नहीं कि
No, but it definitely has been.
मेरे साथ नहीं हुआ तो वो किसी और के साथ
नहीं, पर हम सबकी जिंदगी में है. It's not a I don't think anyone is like हम सब जानते हैं.
And like there were incidents in my childhood, and I told my mother very later, and she was like, she was like, my mind is blown because this person was very unassuming and very like.
There's no,
like she's traumatized. Of course, she's traumatized.
देखिए हमने एक विलेनाइज किया हुआ है. हमारे जहन में हरासर एक पर्टिकुलर शेप, साइज, क्लास के नजर आते हैं. But ऐसा कुछ नहीं है, right?
हाँ.
Anybody, it's a power game, and anybody can be abusive.
Yeah.
And we definitely all have people walking around us who are that. So I don't know, बहुत heavy हो गया ये. But this is important, right? This is like.
But like, tell me, so like this whole lifestyle that you've fought for to build for yourself, एक तो resistance होती है अपने own घर से, और एक resistance होती है जहाँ आप रहने जा रहे हैं. Like, we read about, and I keep giving the context of India because that's a very similar kind of construct. So many landlords won't give tenancy to single women.
Oh yeah.
Have you had that situation?
Yeah, there's a lot of you have to look at a lot of different places. They want to know what do you do if you say I'm a creator, if I'm a writer, or they're like क्या लिखती हैं, या अगर आप जैसे मेरे कुछ दोस्त थे filmmakers, फिर वो मसला होता है studio होगा, the word studio suddenly sends up red flags, like what kind of a studio. So it takes a while. Sometimes you have to lie. कुछ चीज़ें pretend करते हैं आप कि हाँ मैं अपनी family के साथ रह रही हूँ, या मेरी बहन है या मेरा भाई है, but वो आपका भाई नहीं है. There's stuff like that, but then there's also the element of money. If you can afford it, it's like don't ask, don't tell.
Yeah.
So then you can get away with it as well.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's a mix. I'm saying it's not
but like,
clear
is there
cut.
a situation where neighbors are like, why are these single women living here?
Oh, there are.
देर तक लोग आते हैं, ये होता है, वो होता है.
There are some.
Like if there's a family living there, रात के 2 बजे 3 बजे कोई आए तो nobody has a problem. But it's like everyone's very hyper aware that there's a single woman living in this house.
No, so when I was looking for a place, there were like some building. They were like, नहीं sorry, इस building में नहीं हो सकता, ये family building है, या इस तरह की चीजें होती थी. But then eventually we did find a place where there are also a bunch of other young people living like this. It works out. There have been incidents of people following me. There have been a lot of times people think I'm a sex worker.
Yeah.
I've had people show up at my door and ask for soliciting, right? So because the thing is that people assume कि अगर आप अकेले हैं, then of course there's only one thing you must be doing, right? So I don't think like it's how to say it. अगर आप अकेले हैं ना और आप आज़ाद दिख रही हैं तो आप sexually available है, बस simple. Even if you're not a sex worker, you are definitely sexually available. So that happens sometimes. But then to counter that, what has also a beautiful thing that has happened is that जिस neighborhood में मैं रहती हूँ, I've been there for over 3 years now, and like the uncle at the superstore, he knows me. The rickshaw walas who hang out, they know me. The chai wala knows me. And there's a familiarity that helps me feel safer. There's a salam dua, there's a baatcheet, right?
Yes.
So that's also what I mean by us stepping out of these very private and sheltered bubbles of like, okay, but you have to realize that me as an upper class person, I'm also being read as a certain way, right?
Yeah.
So I also need to make that step of openness and not demonizing the other person on the street and thinking oh, they're just after me. And most of the times when I've been solicited or, when it's like people following me, it's not been the chowkidar or the supermarket. Like, it's not the working class men. It's usually Vivo uncles.
Yeah.
The number of times these bloody big cars have pulled up and an uncle at 11 a.m. has been like, chalo, type,
Wow.
So, yes, it's uncomfortable to push your boundary in this way of, okay, I am going to, make myself visible in this way that I live alone.
Yeah.
Okay? But you can find community.
Yeah.
Even in that.
Yeah.
Right? People always do. Like that's what people do. And most people, I really like to believe, are good.
No,
they're not out to get you.
You have built this community. Like, again, what access you give us to your life. I've always seen you with like-minded friends. Sitting with friends, working on projects, like little art projects, and
I love. Ek to I grew up I was born in a house of 25 people.
Okay.
And then वो joint family छोटी होती गई, फिर 15 लोग हो गए, और फिर जब मैं 18 साल की थी, then we became a nuclear family, where it was just me and my parents.
Okay.
So I grew up in a lot of like things happening, and I love that kind of energy. And with my own home space, I mean, I love having this communal vibe of दोस्त यार आ रहे हैं.
Yes.
लोग अक्सर open door policy अक्सर लोग रह रहे होते हैं. It's also like this sharing, like when I was in my early 20s, I had a lot of older friends who like kept me in this way also, right? Ki, use our space. Like this is your kind of family outside of the biological family.
Yeah.
And that meant so much to me because that showed me new ways of living, right? So now that I have my own space, it means the world to me that it is a space that my community can also, be a part of.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Was Saraswati by the sea your blog?
Saraswati is my cycle. I really love to cycle. It's her name.
Saraswati is your
Yeah, it's my cycle's name.
I
Oh my
love
god,
it.
I love it. कुछ लोगों को लगता है मेरा दूसरा नाम Saraswati. I've even gotten emails. Dear Saraswati.
Dear Saraswati.
It works in like a, in a dating. If someone's like flirting with me and they call me, I'm like cute, but don't do it like on email.
Don't do it
No.
professionally.
No.
Oh my god.
Saraswati is my cycle.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
Sadia, thank you so
Yeah.
much. Thank you so much. I'm not going to say I had a great time. It was very, this is
So
very
sorry.
educational. This is very enlightening. And
I hate being a teacher. I hate it. No.
Thank you for your service. No. Honestly, so much of this is, like, I think we all know these things inside and we feel them and we observe them around, but like, to have someone say so many of these things is just, it's empowering, but also it's like refreshing to see the kind of space that you've made for yourself and the kind of world that you've created for yourself, but also the self-awareness you also have and the sort of openness you have towards other women कि मैंने तो कर लिया आपने क्यों नहीं किया है आप क्यों नहीं करे. Like I've seen so many women who've just been like, I live this life, and if you are in your like late 20s and if you're like a woman in your 30s and you haven't done this yet, I don't know, why are you still living with your parents? And I was just like, no.
Yeah.
So
No,
it's so
that's not
refreshing for you
helpful.
to have like this really openness. Thank you for bringing that to this
You're
conversation.
welcome.
I'm so glad we could have you on Sister Please. Thank you so much, and we'll
Thank
be
you
back
so much.
next week with another episode of Sister Please. This is me, Khizra Munir, and my guest Sadia Khatri. Bye.
Bye.